one of the best things I ever did was I actually sent emails to 10 people who I very much trusted. That my dad, my grandpa, you look at things like fellow coworkers, previous bosses, and there's a set questions that you can ask. You can say, hey, what do I do really well? Where would you say I could do better? If you would rate and send those emails, be ready for that feedback. It's very humbling, but you never get it if you don't ask. Very few people in life, no matter how much they love you and how much they're your number one fan, want to come to you and go, when you do this, you kind of sound like a jerk. Like, people don't want to give you that feedback, but if you ask for it, they will. So that's a great way.
Wow. It's funny. I don't know why, but I was getting like the chills when you were sharing that, because that's so powerful. But so many people are, I'm going to try it now, because you've got me thinking like, okay, I haven't asked anybody in a while. Most people just volunteer their opinion a lot of times, but I would love to know, and I'm getting chills too thinking about it, because so many people are so scared to jump out and ask someone like that. Like, that's one of the most unique things I've actually ever heard on our podcast. That's really cool. Welcome back to the CA Power Players Podcast, live every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm your host, Cody Askins. Today I got a special guest, one of my favorite people. She is awesome. She's everywhere. Miss Kim Sixkiller, the president of Magellan Healthcare. Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Cody. How are you?
I am awesome. It's great to be around you as well. You're one of those people, by the way, that are just positive, vibrant, smiling, great with people. You go to a lot of stuff, right? So you're well known, you're around, which is awesome. So I'm really excited to really dive into more of your story today. I know we've done that on the marketing side several times. We haven't got a chance to do that together yet on the CA side. So I'm excited for that. Yeah. So I appreciate your time today. Who was Kim before Magellan and before insurance and all this kind of stuff? I just want to learn your story a little bit.
Yeah. So I pretty much grew up my entire life in Kansas. And then I was actually in law enforcement. So I worked for 911 for several years.
Wow.
Yeah. So dispatching, loved doing that. But then my husband and I, when we got married, he is a sergeant on the police department. And we decided somebody needed to be able to be home during regular hours for the kiddos.
Yes.
So I took a job over at Security Benefit in Topeka. Didn't know what an annuity was, kind of worked my way up from the call center there and got the opportunity to get into the IMO space and kind of the office service work for the back office of carriers and agents. And got the opportunity to go over to another large company here in town and really work on life insurance. And then I love Medicare. My grandma had some situations where she kind of was getting taken advantage of and they weren't really pitching the whole story to her. So when I got the opportunity to break into that and kind of help be that advocate for seniors, that was kind of became my niche. And then Brian and Jared, our co-owners, came to me about 9 months ago and said, hey, why don't you come here? And here I am.
I love it. I love it. Well, you got a ton of experience in a lot of different places. 911 operator. I bet you've got some stories you could, we won't share today, but you probably got some,
We do definitely have stories we can talk about over cocktails sometime.
Yeah. In Puerto Rico. What was the, what was that like? Like, what did you learn there that you still use today?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing was the fact that you have to put your trust and faith in others. You can't know and be all things. And so it's really humbling to know as a dispatcher, those officers really depend on you to ask the proper questions, to forward think and really pass the information along. So communication is key. And I really talk to my team about that today. We're one big team and everyone is just as important as the other. And it's just about asking the right questions. And if you fail to, just learn from it. Like, things are going to happen, but it's my biggest thing.
What was about insurance that kind of stood out to you when you were considering jumping into insurance?
Oh man, I tell you what, the ability to really kind of build your own future. I love how in insurance, obviously, after you kind of get going, you get things underneath it, you can really kind of formulate your hours and what you want to do based on
Yes.
what's important to you. So there's a freedom in, knowing that you can be at your kids' soccer games, knowing that you can go on those vacations. That's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say you have more freedom now than you did before?
Yeah, definitely. I travel a lot right now, but
Yeah.
I actually make that travel schedule myself. So
That's
my
awesome.
daughter is a female wrestler. And so I knew that I could say, hey, this is absolutely not a date that I can be available to work because if she's going to state and those kind of things, so I can control that more.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's smart. And seeing, because you've worked with, I mean, what, thousands of agents over the years?
Thousands of agents, yes. So previously, I actually had about 550 direct agents that I was in charge of really coaching and taking care of, that's a lot of agents.
Wow.
But they were amazing. One of the things that I feel like I've always done well is when I'm with someone, kind of like you and I talked about, you're the most important person. Like I'm with that person, I'm focused on that person, giving that person what they need, kind of talking through things. And so now we've got about 4,000 agents with Magellan. And we're just kind of working through who wants to add Medicare, make sure they kind of close the back door on their practice to keep the fox out of the hen house. And it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, well, I mean, so there's a lot of people that work with, let's just say that someone's working with 50 agents directly, but not 550 directly.
Yeah.
What did you enjoy about that? What did you not love about it? What did you learn that you can pass on to others that would love to be able to work with 550 at one point, maybe from a monetary standpoint, but it can sound like super overwhelming,
Yeah, so it can be overwhelming, but the thing is, just as much as they have expectations of you, it's a mutual respect that you have your expectations. So communicating with them, not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses. So I would tell any of my agent partners, hey, if you want to get a hold of me right away, shoot me an email. I'm that person all day long who, as I'm doing other things, will keep an eye on their email. Some people aren't that way. Some people will say, hey, text me. Like, setting those expectations and that realistic communication. Tell people how you best work. And so that sets volumes. And then it's just the trust of setting expectations. So Cody, if you came to me and said, hey, Kim, can you do this for me? I'd say, sure, let me look at this. And here's when I will get back to you, and setting that timeline. I think people forget to set an expectation up front, and then they don't understand why somebody's checking up on them constantly. Well, my expectation and your expectation aren't leveled. And so I think that in itself does volumes for a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. And they're not also too, like if they're needing something from you, it's okay to say, here's how I want to get back to you and help you,
Yeah.
I'm shocked you said email because I hate email, but you love it. Right. So that's where,
yeah.
What's funny is it's good that you're saying that though, because if you think about it, like, and you guys listening, if you think about this, I would have maybe sent Kim information a different way, but now I know, you know what? She checks email often. She's got a bunch, she's got people emailing her all day, but she prefers that, and so that's good to know. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody's just built differently, right? We're all wired differently. My thing is, there's a lot of things that I know off the top of my head, but getting me on the phone to tell you might be harder because I'm booked all day long training and coaching other agents. But if you ask me something, I can easily shoot the email with the data to you, and then you're not waiting for 6 hours for that response. And some agents prefer to get on the phone, and that's okay too. And that's where I love technology nowadays with Calendly and everything. It's like, hey, you don't have to wait for me to tell you when I'm available. Go grab a link. Take any time on my calendar you want. And so that's one of my favorite things is Calendly.
Yeah, that's really smart too. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just speaking to a group. I forget, last week somewhere in Chattanooga. And they said they were talking about how one of the things that people they struggle with was time management. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, how often are we going like back and forth with people on trying to schedule something? It's like, no, this day. No, I can't do that. No, I can do that. When the link just solves a lot of problems. And so I'm not saying I want to physically go use a link, but it makes it so much simpler for both parties to just jump on each other's schedule. It's really smart. It's really cool.
It depends on where you're at in your career too. Like obviously you don't want people to be able to book up all of your time because of what you have going on. But I also like you can time block with that too. So obviously 8 hours a day every day is not open for people to book for me. But I make sure that I have certain times every day that I set aside so I know that they're taken care of. And I also love that, again, it's a way of kind of training the person that you're working with, and they know, okay, look, if I want time with her, I need to put that on the calendar. Of course, you still get the emergency text, things happen, and you want to have time for that. But you also want people to understand your time is valuable too, and you want to schedule it properly.
Yeah. Yeah. What you mentioned that you were helping coach and mentor and really help agents get to another level in their business, and you had a numerous amount you were working with. What's some of the things that you did that you and your agent saw success from, that you could provide some context to someone that's trying to be better at helping coach and mentor their agents along the way?
So one of the things is I think that as we get going, and we're such a busy instant gratification society, that we think that we have delivered a message, but the truth is we may have missed out, right? As you're scheduling something, you may tell Cassidy something, but you forgot to tell Derek, but you thought you told the team, right? So what I do is I make sure to block in times where I do those trainings. So a marketing, once a month, I have a marketing call. Any of my agents who are in my hierarchy can join, and we have a discussion about that. And I love open forums. So obviously you want to be able to control that chaos a little bit with some kind of a person helping you. But I want to deliver the message, and then I want them to ask the questions, but I also want them to feed on each other. And I think it's better that way. I used to spend all this time doing one-on-ones, and I was talking about the same thing over and over and over. And then I was like, oh, I could just hold one and have 10 of you in it. And then we break off where we need to. So
yeah, that's actually really smart too, because there's a lot of people that are like, they end up delivering the same message like 12 different times a month, when they could really like organize. That's actually brilliant, because then they can organize that into a more of a group fashion. That's cool.
Yeah. And so like, I know Wetmore does a lot of things where he's got like some of those pre-recordings as he's like recruiting stuff. I love that as well. When you're doing recruitment and different things, you can do some of that pre-recording, but the actual training, I like them live just because I gain value in, as I have questions, being able to kind of think through it and play off of that. So I do have some canned recording of one-on-one training, but I also like to offer it live as well. So, and setting like expectations. So I don't spend time anymore on trainings with agents until they already fully have their life and health, their AHIP, and then also their contracting paperwork turned in, because we're going to regurgitate it 5 times, or how many times do they not end up taking off? And so it's a little bit of that time protection too.
It's so good. I hope you guys are taking notes on this one specifically, because I see a lot of recruiters that end up spending a ton of time with people, and then they don't actually follow through with what they said they were going to do to begin with. And they spent hours, and then they don't end up getting anything from them. Right. Yeah. That's brilliant. Like, that's wild. It happens so much too. Like, most people don't realize how much that specific piece is a real problem. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah. And the recruiters too, I think that they also forget that they need to move at the speed of the person. So if you've got a person who's super on board and moving and going, then make sure that you're following with them as much as you can. But if you have somebody who takes weeks to get back to you, it's okay to say, hey, yep, I've got it, and I will get to this. Like, because you don't want to prioritize everyone every time. You just can't, right?
So yeah, true. You've worked with, and Kim's dropped several nuggets today, which I've made notes of. I've got a whole already, and we've only been on like 13 minutes. You mentioned, well, you didn't mention it, but I know you've worked with a bunch of top producers over the years, specifically. Give me an example of, not names, but what they did production wise, how successful they were, and then also some of the things that separated them from the agents that maybe aren't top producers yet.
Yeah. So I think where my background is a little different than a lot of our colleagues is the independent marketing organizations that I've worked with were first and foremost annuity producing carriers. So I've worked with the top 2 of the top 3 IMOs in the annuity space. So one of my agents that I worked with, he did around $220 million a year in annuity. That was his office production.
Wow.
Quite a bit of it was his, but he had a team. And then I was actually working with him for a while in life insurance and then moving into the Medicare side of things. And the big thing is he knew when to delegate. He understood that he could not control all facets of the business. He ultimately wants to oversee it all, but you have to trust those people that you put in place. And so one of the things that I see high producing agents and business owners do is they put the people in place that they have the faith in. And when I say that, I really believe that there's always a right seat on the bus for most people. So it's okay if you hire Billy and you thought Billy was going to be this, but over time you find that he fits here better. It's okay to figure out ways to strategically have that right seat on the bus and move them, because you and I both know, as much as we have to delegate, if I don't trust you, if I have to delegate it and check up, micromanagement serves no one. So they understand that they need to move that person on the bus, if you will.
Yes.
With Medicare, the biggest thing that I see is if you are running a shop where you've got agents under you and you're doing other things as a primary, whether that's assets under management or life insurance or annuities, you don't have to be the principal on all things. So that's something that I'm amazed at, how many agents will sit there and do all their contracting and their AHIP, and they do all of these things to be the principal of their Medicare business and never sell a single contract. And they don't have to do that. So you can actually reassign who your principal is. They don't have to be on your bank account. They don't have to be on your articles of incorporation. There's just certain letters that we have completely cleared out with all of our carriers.
Wow.
And all of that commission will pay to your business, and you can still decide who you pay, how you pay them, when you pay them, but you don't have to do all that back paperwork. Now, obviously, there's some legality, and that means you can't do those sales, right? You can't sit down and discuss Medicare Advantage plans, et cetera. But again, why would an annuity producer want to sit down and do a Medicare sale when they could give it to someone else and their time is better spent elsewhere?
Correct. Especially when they're doing 220 million annuities. The last thing they should have filling out a Medicare app. I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even do his mom's own Medicare app. You know, he's got other people. He's like, all right, here you go. Take care of my mom.
I mean, what else have you noticed? Like some top producer tips? Because these are good. Like put people in the right place that they have faith in. That's brilliant. Also, the things you're touching on is the timepiece. Like they just value their time to a whole nother level compared to don't yet.
100%. Also, I think there's an investment in having to stay the course. I have seen the difference between an agent who is successful for far longer and has that trajectory of a career, because let's say they decide digital marketing is going to be their thing. That's awesome. You and I both know that you are not going to turn on digital marketing and, oh, look at my 500 leads next week, right? It is a commitment. And there's the level setting. If you work with somebody like your guys' team, Secure Agent Marketing, there's a level setting. Hey, this is how long it takes. But they understand that investment up front. So they're not 60 days in going, oh, let's cut this, let's move over here. Because agents by nature, we're guilty of it too as business owners. We like to follow those shiny pennies. But you have to pick one or two things that you can do really well, kind of bang those out, figure out what those are, run those, then start adding more, because the growth comes in the addition, not taking money. If $10,000 in lead mailings is what's making me successful, I'm not going to pull back on that. I'm going to continue to do that. And now I'm going to put $5,000 toward digital. You have to continue to invest back in the business.
Yes. And two, they always say success, and what you just said was really, they always say success people make decisions quickly, but they change them slowly. And we see so many agents that honestly, they make slow decisions. And then when they do, they change them frequently, right? Instead of really having a commitment level to doing something long-term. For example, you see a lot of people that probably do seminars, workshops, right? To some degree with different stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of them that their very first workshop or their second or the third wasn't the best workshop they ever did. And maybe they didn't even get a return the first time. Well, but I bet the 50th, they were like freaking workshop experts, where a lot of new agents will do something and be like, well, that didn't work, so it must not work, or it's just not for me, or I'm not them, or whatever, where they don't realize that the other person may have just stuck with it.
Yeah. One of my least favorite questions is when an agent tells me, hey, what time and date should I hold my seminar? And I'm like, that's completely dependent on your area, right? Some areas 5:30 on Tuesday is perfect. And some areas You have to have it right at 5 as people are coming home. And so you have to be willing to play with those equations until you find that sweet spot. And I think that the truly successful long-term business owners understand that. They know that, hey, and they ask questions. They're not afraid to ask for help. You don't be proud. Like, I have no problem picking up the phone and calling some of our other power players and being like, hey guys, I don't know what I'm doing here. Hey, Adrian, can you help me with this IUL? I don't know how to do this part.
Yes.
And leaning on people who know other things.
Yeah, that's one thing you really just mentioned too, is like they tend to keep their ego and their pride out of the equation. You know,
100%.
Listen, they realize they don't know it all. I find I'm actually reading a book by John Maxwell talking about developing the leaders around you, and I'm reading, like, I'm trying to read more of his stuff, leadership. Man, some people struggle with, and I have too. We all do it from time to time. But what would you recommend if someone struggles with that, like the ego and the pride piece, but it's going to hold them back? You know,
it definitely does hold you back. One of the most maybe one of the best things I ever did was I actually sent emails to 10 people who I very much trusted. That my dad, my grandpa, you look at things like fellow coworkers, previous bosses, and there's a set questions that you can ask. You can say, hey, what do I do really well? Where would you say I could do better? If you would rate and send those emails, be ready for that feedback. It's very humbling. But you never get it if you don't ask. Very few people in life, no matter how much they love you and how much they're your number one fan, want to come to you and go, when you do this, you kind of sound like a jerk. Like, people don't want to give you that feedback. But if you ask for it, they will. So that's a great way.
Wow. It's funny. I don't know why, but I was getting like the chills when you were sharing that, because that's so powerful. But so many people are, I'm going to try it now, because you've got me thinking like, okay, I haven't asked anybody in a while. Most people just volunteer their opinion a lot of times, but I would love to know, and I'm getting chills too thinking about it, because so many people are so scared to jump out and ask someone like that. Like, that's one of the most unique things I've actually ever heard on our podcast. That's really cool. It's
super. And ask your wife, ask if your kids are old enough. And so if you have kids, ask your kids. Like, I have a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old. They have no problem telling me what they think. Yeah. But when you ask them to sit down and really dive into, hey, how can I do this better? Because it goes to all facets of life, right? How can I be a better wife, a better mom, a better business owner, a better friend? It's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's kind of pivot to someone that's working with an organization, or they have contracts, or they're doing this or that. What should they be, without diving too deep, obviously, what should they be considering? What should they be looking for? What should some red flags be? I'm just thinking of someone out there that maybe they feel alone. They're not getting any help.
Like the agents out there?
Yeah, just producers in general. Maybe they just don't know a lot,
Yeah. One of the things, I love the different Facebook groups and different things that are out there where we can all help each other. But the number one thing that I see is agents who are asking, hey, what do I do about this on my IMO? I'm not getting this. And I wish all agents really understood that at the end of the day, it's a job interview. And you as the agent really do hold the power. I would challenge you and say that there is nothing that one IMO offers that another IMO can't offer, other than maybe a proprietary product. But so when you're going into these discussions and first getting started as an agent, just getting contracts is not the right way to do it. Take the time and ask people, what are the good, what's the bad, what's the ugly? Don't ever let somebody give you a quid pro quo situation. It's just not good. If they're not willing to help you, I think one of the things I love about our fellow power players is they will help you and guide the way. You look at the Roger Shorts and the Tony Mermans, nothing to gain from it. I'm no hierarchy in that, but they say, hey, yeah, let me help you with this. And when people want to give and make you do better, those are the people you should look to partner with in business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. It's almost, it's just a more selfless approach,
100%.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that in the business, they only want to help or do something for someone if they're going to actually get something out of it. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I got to brag on you, because you have never been that way, honestly. You have been someone that is willing to help anyone with anything, anytime, whether they have contracts with you or not. And that speaks volumes about you as a person and who you are and how much you believe in the organization you're with. And
Thank you.
it's cool. Yeah, you're welcome.
You.
It's cool. Yeah. It's
there's far too much of this in business where people don't just live by how would you want to be treated? How would you want somebody to treat your daughter or your son or your mom or your dad? And so I think when you just really bring it back to basics, that's so much easier. I'm not worried about secret. None of us have a secret sauce. Let's face it. Turning 65 is turning 65. Everybody has done the different kinds of marketing. You can come up with all these ideas, but everybody knows how to send a lead mailer or hooks. So it really becomes the relationship and how do you get support when you need it?
Yes, such an important piece. Yeah, it's such a relationship business in general. If you had to, I haven't asked this question in a long time. I'm curious. If you had to, I'm actually got a few questions that came to mind. If you had to describe yourself in one word, how would you describe Kim Sixkiller?
Tenacious.
Yeah. I was gonna say driven for sure. Yeah, that's good. I love tenacious even better. That's awesome.
It's been used good and bad for me, but it's very accurate, I think.
Yeah, you also know where you stand. You know, like you're not gonna just fake stuff with people. Like even in our relationship, you've been honest along the way. Like, hey, here's where I stand, and I've always appreciated that because a lot of people, you never know what they're thinking. You don't know whether they hate your guts or they love you. You know, like. But that's not true with you, which I appreciate.
I definitely, that's something that I have softened over time. But yeah, you always kind of know where you stand with me. Yeah, everyone does. And that's why I tell my kids, just be honest, but also figure out a way to do it in a more softer way so people appreciate it.
Correct. Yeah. If someone wants to learn more about you and what you're doing, and obviously you are putting out a ton of content, you're speaking on panels at road shows and you're going to Puerto Rico or Power Players and, you know, you're part of 8%, you'll probably end up doing some breakouts or something, I'm sure. How would someone learn more about you? How do they follow you? Could they reach out?
Yeah. So they can always reach out to me. My Calendly link is available for scheduling on our website. It's partnerwithmhc.com. And then my personal website is k6medicare.com. So it's the letter K, the number 6. Because one of the things that I've continued to do, as well as being on the agent coaching side, is also help clients. I do it more on just a referral base now when somebody comes to me and needs help, but I don't think that you should be coaching agents and telling them how to do things and how to run their business and market if you don't sit in that chair and do it too. That's one of the things that, you know, Pete talks about going to the field and Emily talks about going into the field. We go out and continue to do it. So you can say, hey, when you sit down, do this. So they can reach out to me there. My email is the letter K, number 6 at magellanfinancial.com. But yeah, they're welcome to reach out to me.
That was a smart email. You'd use first name, last name, and Magellan and financial and healthcare and all that. It would have got really long. So that's good.
It was super long when I first started. And I'm like, hey guys, I got an idea. And they're like, okay, yeah, here's your alias.
You're never going to have another K6. Just do it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It'll be fine.
I love it. Well, you have a very memorable last name. It's easy to, you know, I mean, it's a cool last name. It's the most unique last name I've probably ever heard. And so it's pretty easy to probably find on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, Instagram or wherever under Kim Sixkiller. So I love it.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. What else would you, in closing, say there's an agent out there that's just, they're just not happy. They're not seeing a ton of success. Maybe they don't feel like they're in the right position or they're selling the right something or they're, you know what I mean? What advice or, motivation could you provide to them?
I would say, and it works for anyone who's out there, if you're not sure, life is way too short to live unhappy. So get in the room, whether that's a road show. We've got all those road shows going on across the country, or you had the virtual not that long ago, but get in the room with other agents and ask the question, be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is the right, what do you think about this? And just hearing other stories, they may find out, hey, I'm just in the wrong product line. Maybe I'm a Medicare agent. Maybe I'm a PNC agent, but take the time to get in the room. And if for some reason getting in the room is a financial block to you, I'm amazed at how many people can reach out to people like us and colleagues and say, look, I want to get in the room, but this is a burden. And sometimes you'll be surprised what rooms they know about that won't cost you as much, or people are willing to say, hey, okay, come to this training. So
correct.
Just get in the room.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference.
Thank you. So powerful. I love it. Well, Kim Sixkiller, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are phenomenal, and look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks in Puerto Rico.
Thanks, Cody.
You got it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you guys for listening to CA Power Players podcast. Love the interview we just had with Kim Sixkiller. Go look her up, reach out to her, follow her. She's amazing. And we'll see you on the next one. Hey, if you enjoyed this, I got another one you're going to love. It's right there. Click on it. See you in there. I want to get everybody's attention really quick before we dive into this, because you've pulled off some incredible stuff. Like, what's a number of how good this business has gotten?
Well, at our peak, we were selling about $14 million in annual premium.